because we were afraid that if we just had like more guest lectures on Zoom, because we can't really do the hands-on portion and be in person with everyone, we were afraid that no one was going to come because they'd be like, oh, it's just like another class on Zoom. Oh, another class on Zoom.
Yeah.
And we didn't want it to feel like that. We didn't want the space to feel like that. But it still needed to be academic and professional in a way, right? And so we came up with basically a journal club.
Maireny, thank you for joining us. You're actually like our biggest fan. I think you're the first person we've had on here that has requested to be on the podcast. So very cool. Nice to have that as well. Let's go ahead and just introduce yourself a little bit.
Okay. Well, my name is Maireny Mundo. Most people just say Mair because Maireny's difficult to pronounce for some people. I'm a microbiology major. I'm the president of the Microbiology Club here at Texas State. What else is notable about me that I can talk about?
Are you a third year, fourth year? How long have you been here at Texas State?
I'm a fourth year senior.
Okay.
I wish I could extend it more and like keep adding minors and stuff, but unfortunately, money,
right,
loans, stuff, can't do it all. I was pre-med. I'm still pre-med. I just kind of took a little backseat on it, kind of weighing my options. So right now I'm just focusing on building up my organization and focusing on my research and just seeing what's out there for me.
As a pre-med myself, I'm actually kind of interested in what you're thinking right now. So you say you're kind of taking a divergence from your pre-med path. Could you speak on that a little bit and kind of what's going on these days?
So I never really questioned whether or not medicine was for me. I still don't question it. I'm sure it's for me. It's like what I want to do. I've never wanted to do anything else. Basically I've been studying for my MCAT for like a year. And then COVID kept happening, things kept happening. So I just like kept pushing it. And then I went through some stuff. So it just like, my focus just wasn't there. And I don't know if you started studying for the MCAT, but like being a whole pre-med, like the MCAT is kind of like the thing that everything like is building up to and very intimidating. And while like, even though that was the only thing I was doing, like during the summer, just studying, it like really takes a toll on you. And so I like took a step back and then just like viewed everything. I decided to take a gap year for myself. And so far, so good. I really enjoyed it. I'm just like able to enjoy things as they come and not so much worried about like, for example, like how this is going to look on a resume or like being a pre-med, like you get told, which is very toxic, I think. Oh, like you need to do this, you need to do this. Do this because it's going to look good on your resume. It's going to look good on your resume. You have to build this whole narrative around your med school application. Otherwise, it'll look inconsistent and blah, 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 blah. So absolutely everything I was doing was just centralized around like this whole thing. And I realized I wasn't doing it for myself. So I just kind of took a step back and I'm just enjoying things. Really.
I think if I'm able to chime in a little bit, the non-pre-med person in this conversation, nothing against pre-meds whatsoever, but I think I can speak on a neutral, I guess, ground. I always found that, like you said, kind of toxic. I feel like a lot of pre-meds, like you said, work towards one goal, and that's, getting to that med school application and like but like you said, building a narrative. Building, a story that has no holes for, the judge to pick at, right? And I feel like at some point, if I was pre-med and if I was going through this journey, I feel like at some point I'd question myself and be like, well, what am I doing? Like, like what's my purpose in what I'm doing? Am I actually doing this because I want to, or am I being, peer pressured into this? Is this really what I want? my end goal to be? Have you ever had those, I guess, like not doubts, but I guess thoughts go through your head? Any of you really, since both of you are pre-med?
Yeah, definitely. More or less because I feel like I have a lot of interest. And for like the first 2 years of like university, college, whatever, I was just like so stressed because I wanted to do so many things and like they didn't really fit with each other. Right. So like I'm really passionate about the environment, but I really have to focus on school and my research and like volunteering for the environment. Like it's not really medical. So how am I going to flip that into like something to build myself up as a med school applicant? Stuff like that. And it was all the time that I was just like struggling with that. And I didn't like it. Like I just wanted to do what I wanted to do. Like I just wanted to have fun. So that actually, I guess I can also talk about this. I'm the ambassador for Guayaquil Yerba Mate at school. There's a couple of us, but that's like something that doesn't really like pull too much on like my education, but I can still do and like it like surrounds this like thing that I really like the environment and want to pursue something to help it and stuff like that. So I found a loophole there. And so then I just kept trying to find loopholes and loopholes and loopholes. And then I just wasn't enjoying it. So then I just took a step back and now I'm just doing what I want.
That really resonated with me when you said that, something that you do might not always look ideal for a medical school application. Like you're volunteering for the environment might not necessarily look as good as volunteering in a hospital. And I think what I preach the most as a pre-med to like, I'm an SI. A lot of students that are in my SI class are also pre-med. I'm always pushing for them to give in to those curiosities. And if you like a lot of things, give in to it. Really try and make sure you've dipped your toes in as many different waters as you can to make sure you make the best decision for your life, really. Everyone says like, oh, I want to be a doctor. And it's like, yeah, maybe, sure. But are you sure? I mean, have you done research? I mean, maybe you want to be a scientist instead, or maybe you want to do something completely different. It's really, I find it really important, and it also really develops your like, you're kind of more of a holistic person. Whenever you go off to your like post undergraduate, experience, and whatever job you end up getting, having seen a lot of different sides to medicine, to research, to volunteering for different organizations is really important to make sure that you're, one, like you've continued to say, is you're enjoying yourself. I definitely agree. It can be very pressuring sometimes as a pre-med to hit all those check boxes, right? That's something that's really frowned upon as well. And I'm glad that it's frowned upon. It's becoming more frowned upon. And it's like, okay, look, if you don't want to do research and that doesn't excite you, don't do it. And I don't think you should necessarily be penalized, especially if you make up for it in other areas. But yeah, you make some really good points in that. You also mentioned that you were getting into research this year and that you really like that. What are you doing?
So what was it? I was like a junior. It was like my first semester as a junior. And I just realized I didn't feel like a scientist. Like I had been studying biology for like 2 years or something. And I just didn't feel like a scientist. Like if someone came up to me and like told me to like perform a lab experiment, I'd be like, what? Like, I can't do that. Like, give me a step-by-step procedure. Like, tell me how to do it. Like, explain to me. Like, I felt like I didn't know anything, right? And so then, the imposter syndrome kicks in and everyone has it, but mine just got really bad. So I was like, okay, well, like, what am I going to do to fix this? Like, I can't be feeling this way. And so I joined the Microbiology Club, and through there, I met this grad student. His name is Zach Mays. He's actually presenting his thesis later this week, so that's exciting. And then I was also really interested in microbiology. I had just switched my major to microbiology, so I just like got really into it.
What were you before microbiology?
I was just biology.
Oh, okay. So you just kind of a little bit more concentrated.
Yeah, I just got tired of talking about plants, honestly. there's two biology majors, like, well, there's a lot, but there's like the plant ones, the animal ones, and then there's just like the microbiology, like pre-med ones, I guess. But anyway, I was really interested in the microbiome. And there's a couple professors studying microbiota and the role of the microbiome on not necessarily people, because that's like very large scale, but just in general, like what it affects. And I think it was Dr. Kumar, who I heard has his lab like doing some work on C. difficile. And so I went to talk to him, and he didn't have any spots open. And I was kind of late in the game, so he didn't have enough spots open. And so then Zach told me about Dr. Camilla Carlos Shanley, who she was studying the role of the gut microbiome on insects, on different types of insects. And so I made an appointment with her. I talked to her. I was like, listen, like, I'm really interested in this. Like, I just want to learn more about it. Like, do you have any space or like anything I can do in the lab? And she did. And so I kind of just did some work under the grad student, Zach. And then I just really enjoyed it. And I found myself like really wanting to just like be in the lab. And then long story short, COVID happened. I didn't get my project assigned until like this semester. My second semester, like doing research. But so far so good. Right now I'm studying antimicrobial resistance on the gut microbiome of this tiny little beetle. It just grows in the Comal Springs area and the San Marcos area. And I'm just comparing it genotypically versus phenotypically, if like those resistances align or if they don't. Yeah, so before then, I had just been running like basically a bunch of PCR and media prep is what I was doing, which really humbles you. I was telling Edgar before you left that no one tells you how much you're going to mess up. Like, yeah. I don't know. I didn't feel prepared to mess up. I was like, oh man, like if I mess up, like I'm out of here. Like it's over. Nah. You shouldn't mess up a lot, but like you can, like it's bound to happen. It's okay. So then once I stopped messing up so much, they gave me like more responsibilities, like the experiments I ran, they were like okay most of the time. Oh, it's also because it's a genomics lab. So they work a lot with DNA extraction, and you need that stuff to be as pure as possible so that when you like send it off to get it sequenced, it's as correct as possible, right? And when you're working with bacterial DNA, it's very small DNA compared to like human DNA, and just the extraction process is different. And then they started like actually using my results from like the physical experiments and actually sending those off to get sequenced. So then that's when I started feeling like pretty good about myself. I was like, yeah, like I can do this. Like
I bet. I was gonna say like what you're doing is now being like analyzed. That's exactly. A pretty cool feeling.
Yeah. And so it felt important. So I wanted to keep going. And I like that feeling. And then COVID happened. So, we kind of took a break. But Ingram Lab, like it was still going. It was just working under like tighter restrictions. But the grad students, like they still like had to do their work. But I was like back home. And then the semester started, had a couple Zoom meetings with my PI. She gave me this project, which is in theory like a very simple project. But I'm learning a lot. And I feel like a scientist, which is like pretty awesome. So that's basically, I don't think you heard what I was doing. I'm basically one of the grad students. The beetle that we're working on, a lot of people work with that beetle. I think 3 of us are working on that beetle, but everyone's doing different stuff with its microbiome. So like I'm testing microbial resistances. Chao Tran, I think you know her, she's in that lab. Yeah. She's working on, I think, the metabolites or something. I'm not too sure. And then Zach did a bunch of stuff. But mine is, I'm just working with like 60 different strains of bacteria. And I ran those through a database and figured out what antimicrobial resistances or what drug classes they coded for resistance. And so that was the genotypic portion of it. And I'm running basically a bunch of Carbie-Bauer tests, which if you don't know, you just plate bacteria on the plate and you put antibiotics on it, and then you see how big the growth of inhibition was. And I'm just comparing to see if that lines up with what the genes line up, or maybe it's just not presenting. So that's what I'm doing.
Something that we kind of started talking about is that sometimes the thought of going into research is that you're going to be thrown into the deep end and be expected to know how to swim. But in reality, it's not that. At first, there's a lot of hand holding, I like to say, whether that's the grad student or the PI. Me personally, when I started doing research, there was always someone next to me. And I appreciated that because obviously, like you said, you mess up a lot, but that's how that's how someone learns. You mess up, you figure out what you did wrong, and then you don't do that again later. So I think if you want to elaborate more on it, of how, going into it, it's not really like, all right, go ahead, like start, right? It's not really that. Do you want to just kind of like expand on that?
Yeah, sure. So like I said at the beginning, like I'd be doing media prep, and in intro level microbiology courses and stuff like that, that's already done for you. Like they give you like maybe the ingredients and stuff on paper, like in your labs, but you don't do it. Like they just do it for you. And so then going in, like the grad student would be like, okay, can you make like a liter of agar and like pour those plates, which is very simple to do, right? But at the time I was like, what? I was like, me alone? Why? No, like you do it. And he's like, okay, like just take a step, like it's on the bottle, like you can do it, just measure it out, like it's going to be okay. So it was very simple stuff to start out with. And then when I started running like the DNA extractions, like the first couple times they'd be there to hold your hand, and then they start like letting go of the leash and be like, okay, like you go do this, I'm going to go do this, I'll be in that room right there, like if you need anything, just knock on the window or like text me, like I'll come in. And so it was a lot of that. You feel very safe. And if you do mess up, it's typically something reversible, or you just do it again and don't mess up again. Which is something that I don't think people tell you. And that's why research a lot of the time is so intimidating, because you feel like there's just like so much responsibility on you, which there is, right? But it's not anything that you should be scared of. Yeah. But eventually they just let you do your thing. And especially with COVID restrictions, there's only so many people that can be in a lab at once. So yeah, I'm still messing up, but it's okay. I'll fix it.
I can surely speak on the messing up part. I just got into Dr. Peterson's lab, who is one of the biochemistry professors here. And I think it was like literally 2 weeks ago, I started going into the lab, and I was assigned a mentor, someone who's training me, and they'll be working with me for the next couple of months, just kind of showing me the ropes. I don't have much lab experience, so these couple of months will be very important for me. But like you said, they're right there. They're kind of, there to answer any questions, show you new techniques. And like the first thing I had to do was make a buffer, and I was like, I have no idea how. It's a totally different thing to do it in like a class to like answer a question. And you do the calculations, but then it's like, all right, you have this much, go ahead and make a buffer. And I was like, I don't know, you're just not prepared for it in that practical way. But by the end of the day, I made a buffer. I think it was yesterday. I made my first successful gel. The first time, forgot to put something in one of the ingredients in the stacking gel, and it just didn't work. But it's just like, now it's my second time trying it, and it worked. So it's all a process, and I'm found to enjoy the process as well. I'm just, every day I'm learning something new. I feel a little bit more comfortable doing this, and I've been given an end goal, and I'm working towards that. And that's all that really matters. I'm also not trying to overdo it in the lab when it comes to time there. I definitely want to start slow and kind of build up. And then once I'm finally on my own project, I can go at it at a steady pace and not like burn out, because like everyone else, we have plenty of things going on these days. So I've also found that finding a balance is also really important. Like, I know we have like midterms next week, right? Thanks for recording this on a midterm, right? But like
I'm
yesterday.
done with mine.
Oh, congrats! That's a nice relief. But yeah, like yesterday, I spent I think 8 hours in the lab. Granted, I wasn't, just doing things, just working on the gel and other things in the lab. I was doing some homework for downtime, but it is gonna be an extra. It's like a class that you'll have to take. So finding a balance is super important. I'll leave it at that.
Something that I guess kind of like moving a little bit away from research. When we started this, you said that you were the Microbiology Club president, right? How were you introduced to this club?
Yeah, so I think the first microbiology course that I took, it was 2400. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think the first one that you're allowed to take as a biology major, which is required, so like you have to take it, is 2400, and it was with Dr. Michael Wilson. He's no longer teaching it, but I think it was like his second semester taking it. And at the start of most lectures, like in the semester, like all the clubs like start promoting themselves, like at the front of the classrooms, or like they'll like put up a slide, or maybe professors will send an email out. And so that's what happened. Like I learned about it. I didn't know that it was a club, and I was really enjoying the class so far. So I was like, oh, like I'll go check it out. Like, I know, like I'll just see what's up. And long story short, I really enjoyed the class. I got really good at it. And I went to the club, and everyone was just so kind, like super inviting. It was just good vibes all around, really good energies. And I really resonated with that. And I wanted to keep going. What they had been doing at the clubs is like they did a couple of technique labs because I mentioned to you guys, like most of the media prep for things like is done for you. But when you get to a research lab, like that's stuff that you should know, right, in theory, to know how to do and how to prepare and like how to like handle yourself around a lab. And that's what they were doing. And then they were also having like guest lectures. And these are like professors just that like teach upper level like microbiology courses, but they were talking about stuff that like wasn't necessarily about their classes. It was just like about their own interests. And then I just kind of realized like professors are like people too, and they have like their outside things, and like their life is not just the class that they take or that they teach. And then I just kept going, and I really liked all the guest lectures that they had. And the volunteer opportunities, like they were cool. And then I became friends with like Zach and Cameron, who doesn't go here anymore. He graduated. And I got along with all the officers. And I realized like it might be a little bit niche of a club, right? Because there's clubs for everything here. And I was a PreMed at the time, so I was in a bunch of stuff. But microbiology was kind of just the one that like I always went back to and really like enjoyed being there in that space. Long story short, I was social chair for a little bit, and then I moved up to presidency.
Nice. So obviously, Nick and I can definitely admit that going from a pre-COVID era to now a COVID era of time, moving an organization and trying to steer it in the right direction, especially during these times, is definitely harder, right? And I think really, how long have you been president for? I didn't ask.
This is my first semester.
So this is your first semester. This is my first semester as president. This is Nick's first semester as vice president. This is kind of like the first for that important of a role. And we had, we're so lucky to do it in one of the hardest semesters, probably ever, right? Because of all the circumstances. So Nick and I have shared in previous podcasts our obstacles this semester. So what obstacles does the microbiology club face this semester and next year, and or next semester, and what are y'all doing to resolve that?
Right. So I'll be honest, I think one of the biggest mistakes that we made transitioning was we didn't have a good plan as to how we were going to acquire new leadership, right? because we had a lot of people graduating and everything was so sudden that we didn't have time, because Microbiology Club is a very, very in-person. It was very, very in-person and very hands-on approach. We were kind of just like, we don't know how to do this. And I had talked to like Edgar about like how to like go about it, but for our club, it like wasn't working. And so that was, I'll be honest, like our biggest mistake. Getting new leadership for the semester has been really difficult for us. Right now, it's only 4 of us running one club. And I remember when it was like 8 of us, it was still difficult. And especially because all of our meetings were very like either techniques or like in-person stuff that we all go to together, or having guest lectures like on in person. Like it was very different, and we didn't know what we were going to do. So we had one student come up to Zach, and he was really interested, and we were looking for leadership position or people to fill those leadership roles. And he was awesome. He was perfect. Like everyone vibed great, but we still had a bunch of roles to fill. But I digress. Because we were afraid that if we just had like more guest lectures on Zoom, because we can't really do the hands-on portion and be in person with everyone, we were afraid that no one was going to come because they'd be like, oh, it's just like another class on Zoom. Oh, another class on Zoom.
Yeah.
And we didn't want it to feel like that. We didn't want the space to feel like that. But it still needed to be academic and professional in a way, right? And so we came up with basically a journal club, something super simple, right? So now I send what I consider and what our officers consider to be like pretty interesting scientific articles. This way we can like analyze the article, read through it. It's typically language that's pretty like simple to understand. Section by section, it helps the members improve their reading and writing skills, which if your listeners have ever written in scientific papers, it's so boring sometimes. And it's so different. And getting used to scientific writing is a really long process. And I wish something that I would have done in my early years of undergrad was read more scientific papers and actually understand what I was reading. Yeah. And so I feel like this was beneficial, like all around. And so like right now we'll like do a little intro, maybe watch like a tech talk or have someone come and speak to us about like the topic. And then we'll just go through the paper, and then conversation just kind of flows naturally. So it's a very intimate like conversation, very intimate club, but it really is like a safe space for like students, and then other topics just like come about. But somehow we always relate it back to microbiology and like the study of like small things and how important that is in like absolutely everything we do. So far I feel like we have a good flow going, you know? But
I love the idea.
Always looking to like make it better or give more to our members, because I definitely feel like we could do more.
Yeah, I love the idea.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think when I did the SURE program, which was like my first real head first into research type of thing, reading those papers was so difficult for me. You know, coming off of Gen Chem 2 and reading about 2,1 like all these compounds that I literally was reading, I had to stop, Google it, come back, go. And it was just kind of like the vocabulary used in these papers is also different. And I remember we took a seminar on how to dissect articles. And after that seminar, I felt so much more prepared. And it's also because I never actually took the time to be like, okay, let me figure this out. So I definitely think that this idea of the journal club will help regardless, you know, anyone who is maybe not specifically interested in microbiome. Really, if you're just interested in science and wants to like get better at reading these articles, you'll benefit from it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the biggest perks, which of course like COVID is terrible, the pandemic is terrible, not defending it, but one of the cool parts and stuff that's like benefited our club is that most of our like dues, right, like yearly or semesterly club dues were for food, pizza, soda, snacks, decorations for like events, and our t-shirts. And since right now we are like limiting like all contact, I'm able to like recruit a bunch more people because that financial barrier isn't there.
It's not
so there. Yeah, I like reached out to like all of like the biology faculty and like invited like the grad students. So like that was a really fun event that we did, and I'm so looking forward to doing that again. But we had like a lot of like grad students being like, oh, like, can I just join? And instead of being like, yeah, you just have to pay money, no, they can just join. We're like, yeah, let me just add you to the Canvas page, like super quick. So that's been really cool.
I think it's very wise to not have dues this semester, considering everything people are going through, and you, like you mentioned, there's not much of a necessity to, pay for things like food, and I did want to ask how often are these journal club meetings? How often do y'all do this?
Yeah, it's bi-weekly. So we just had one last week, or actually I can talk about it a little. It was about shark technology. I don't know if you guys heard of it. Shark Tech is like a patent, but what it is, if you guys have taken bio courses, I'm sure you guys know what biofilm is. Right? It's just a bunch of bacteria that grow together in a colony in a polysaccharide matrix, and it's really hard to get rid of. And it's a really big problem in hospitals, especially with catheters, IVs, pacemakers, stuff like that, devices that like go into the body, because those aren't replaced often. And so it just creates a lot of infections. Most of the time they're antibiotic resistant. So the scientists came up with the idea, or like they observed that biofilm wasn't growing on the underside of sharks, but it would grow on like whales and manatees. And I think the biggest one was fouling is what it's called, where like barnacles and texture and bacteria, whatever, grows on the side of Navy ships. And so they had some like chemical ways of like going about that and getting rid of the biofilm or preventing it. But they observed that like, why doesn't this grow on sharks, but like every other type of like big sea animal?
That's true.
Right? And so what they did is they replicated the texture of the shark skin. They like made a mold of it, and then they grew it on agar. And they found that biofilm just didn't grow on it. And they attributed that to like the surface energy that the texture has. Not like, I don't know exactly what it is, but that's what I got from the paper. And they replicated it in like catheters and other like medical devices, and biofilm just didn't grow on it. So we thought like that was super cool. So that was last week. I'm excited to see what we choose this week.
Yeah. So it's not like too complicated. You were definitely able to take away something about now you can talk about it, and if that's something you're interested in, maybe you found something for someone who was attending that. Maybe they're really interested in this technology now, and they're maybe not considering their pre-med path anymore. I really like that idea. And I was just thinking as you were talking about it, like you just pull publications, like whatever seems interesting, a group of y'all pick, like, I mean, there are researchers at this university. What if y'all got like a recent publication from one of the faculty here, and instead of like where it could still be a conversation about the article, maybe it could be a Q&A as well. Maybe you can have them come, and that'd be an interesting way to integrate the faculty and the professor and the students. The students might look into some research opportunity with the professor. That's interesting as well. There's a lot of room for growth here. I think this would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely, which is why it's so exciting to like actually start it up and like see like the direction we can take it. But I have like definitely thought about your suggestion, because we have this grad student, Starla Thornhill. She studies biofilms.
Okay.
And I think she's even like having a project sent off on a rocket launch, like with NASA. And so we were like invited to hear her like thesis defense. So that's really interesting. And maybe we can like even have her on. But yeah, this conversation will definitely make me email her.
Great. Glad you could take away something from it too. So there was something else I wanted to ask you about with the journal club, but it's not coming to me. Yeah, Edgar, do you have something?
I do
we'll
have a
come back
question
later. Yeah.
Yeah, I was say it'll probably come back. So we are both H-LSAMP scholars here at
Mm-hmm.
Texas State, and we actually both went in at the same time. Uh, what was it? 2018? No, that's a lie. 2019.
2019.
Yeah, 2019. It was my freshman year going into sophomore year, and I believe it was your sophomore year going into junior year.
Correct.
I really enjoy being in the program. I think we definitely get a lot of benefits, not just funds wise, like for school and to go to conferences, but I feel like we also get a family bond that I see some scholarship programs have and some don't, or maybe try, but not really there.
Explain
How
the
has
program a little bit. Yeah, give some background on this H-LSAMP program.
Yeah, so I don't know what it stands for. It's a really